The night sky above the quiet green forest turned bright silver without warning. A low, deep sound came from the clouds. Not thunder. It was the kind of sound that made animals run and children cry. In a small village, people looked up in fear. Old men closed their windows. Mothers held their children close. The stars were no longer shining alone. A dark shadow cut through the night. It was not a cloud. It was a warship. The Galactic Empire had come. For many years, the people of this planet had lived under the Empire's rule. They paid their taxes. They gave their labor. And sometimes the Empire took more than that. It took children. Strong, young children who never came back. The people had learned to stay silent. But silence did not make the pain smaller. In a wooden house on the edge of the forest, a woman opened her eyes. Her name was Baba Yaga. Long gray hair fell around her shoulders. Her hands were rough like bark. Her face looked calm, but her eyes, they burned like hot coals. She had lost 3 sons, Luca, Ilya, and Dima. They had been taken in the night 3 years ago. She had searched, begged, and waited. But the Empire never gives back what it takes. Tonight she felt it. The same cold wind, the same iron smell in the air. The Empire had returned. But she was no longer the woman who cried at her door. Tonight, she was ready. The humming sound grew louder, shaking the trees. Dogs barked wildly. A baby started to cry. The massive warship came lower, its sharp body slicing the air. The light from its engines turned night into day, and then the hatch opened. Black-armored soldiers jumped down one by one like metal shadows. Their boots hit the ground hard. Their faces were covered by silver masks. Their movements were cold, exact, and empty. They carried long rifles that hummed with red light. "They're here again," whispered an old woman behind her curtain. "They'll take more," another voice answered, but not everyone hid. Baba Yaga stepped out of her house barefoot. Her breath fogged in the cold air. Her coat was heavy, old, and black like the forest itself. Around her neck, a small charm made of wood and iron shone softly. She walked toward the center of the village. People whispered. Some begged her to go back, but she didn't listen. Her steps were slow but firm. Every step was a promise. The commander of the soldiers noticed her. He raised one hand and the soldiers aimed their guns. "Old woman," the commander said in a cold metal voice. "Step aside." She didn't stop. She didn't answer. "I said," he repeated louder, "step aside, or be removed." Baba Yaga finally stopped just a few feet from the first line of soldiers. She lifted her chin. Her voice was calm but sharp. "You took my sons," she said. The commander tilted his helmet. "You are warned. You took my blood," she said again. This time louder. A soldier moved closer, aiming his rifle at her chest. But Baba Yaga's face didn't change. She slowly moved her hand and touched the wooden staff strapped to her back. The staff was dark brown, covered with old runes. It had been quiet for a long time. But tonight it was alive. The villagers were frozen behind their doors. No one had ever stood in front of the soldiers like this. Most people gave up. They handed over their children and cried silently. But Baba Yaga, she was something else. The commander laughed. "You think a stick will stop us?" But before Baba Yaga spoke again, something moved in the forest. A low growl echoed through the night. It made even the soldiers stiffen. 2 shapes came out of the shadows, low to the ground, fast and silent. They were honey badgers, but not normal ones. These were bigger, their muscles thick and strong. Their fur shone black and silver under the ship's light. Their eyes glowed red. These were not pets. They were weapons. Baba Yaga had raised them, trained them, changed them. The villagers gasped. Even the soldiers stepped back slightly. They had seen many things across the galaxy, but these beasts, they were different. Wild and loyal, dangerous and silent. Baba Yaga placed her hand gently on the staff. "My sons are gone," she said softly. "But my rage is not." The commander raised his arm. "Fire!" The soldiers aimed. Red light flashed from their rifles. One beam shot past Baba Yaga, hitting a tree behind her. It exploded in flames, but she didn't flinch. The honey badgers roared and leapt forward. The first one crashed into a soldier with the force of a hammer. Metal armor cracked. The soldier fell screaming. The second badger slid under the legs of another soldier and tore through the cables on his suit. Sparks flew like red fireflies. The squad tried to fire again, but the badgers were too fast. They moved like smoke and thunder at the same time. One soldier turned. A claw ripped through his leg. Another soldier raised his rifle. Too slow. A set of sharp teeth sank into his arm. For the first time, the galactic soldiers screamed. The commander shouted orders, but his voice cracked. He had fought rebels before, pirates, smugglers, but never this. Never a mother with monsters. Baba Yaga walked slowly through the chaos. Her face was calm. Her heart was burning. She whispered old words under her breath. The runes on her staff glowed with green light. The honey badgers were ruthless. One climbed up a soldier's back and bit his neck. The other threw a man to the ground like he was nothing. Red light from rifles painted the night, but it was no use. The beast didn't stop. "Fall back!" the commander shouted. The soldiers ran toward the ship. Some dragged their wounded. The honey badgers stood between them and Baba Yaga like two black walls. Their fur was stained with silver blood. Their eyes burned brighter now. The commander aimed his gun at Baba Yaga one last time. "You will die for this," he said. She smiled. It was not a kind smile. It was sharp, like a blade. "You took my sons," she said. "Now I take your fear." The commander fired, but the beam never reached her. The staff glowed and the air around her bent. The shot twisted away like wind pushing a leaf. The commander froze. The honey badgers moved again. One jumped and knocked the gun from his hands. The other stood at his back. Baba Yaga walked closer. He could see her face clearly now. There was no fear in her. Only a storm. The warship started to lift off. The soldiers who could still walk scrambled inside. The engines roared. The sky shook. And then the ship disappeared into the dark clouds. The village was silent again. The fire in the tree still burned, but the night was calm. The villagers stepped out slowly. Their faces showed shock, fear, and something else. Hope. Baba Yaga turned away from the fire and looked up at the sky. Her beasts stood beside her, breathing heavily, their fur wet with blood. She thought of Luca. She thought of Ilya. She thought of Dima, her sons. Somewhere out there, they were waiting. Or they were already gone. But either way, the Empire would pay. An old man walked closer. His hands shook. "What will you do now?" he asked. Baba Yaga looked at the stars with cold eyes. "I'm going to bring my sons home," she said, "and I will burn their empire down." The honey badgers growled softly at her side, as if they understood every word. The villagers watched her in silence. For years they had lived in fear. But tonight they saw something else, something stronger than the empire. They saw a mother rise, and the galaxy would never forget the night Baba Yaga came for war. The night after the attack was quiet, but not peaceful. The forest still smelled like smoke and fear. Broken branches and black armor pieces lay on the cold ground. Blood stained the soil, not the villagers' blood, but the empire's. For the first time in years, the village had not lost its children. This time, the empire had lost. Baba Yaga sat near a dying fire outside her wooden house. The flames reflected in her eyes like little stars. Beside her, the two honey badgers lay still but alert. Their ears twitched at every small sound. Their breathing was low and steady, like two sleeping beasts waiting for war. She slowly ran her hand through the thick fur of the bigger one, whispering something in an old language. It purred softly like a heavy drum. These creatures were not just pets. They were part of her soul, created with care and anger. She had built them with a purpose, to fight what normal people could not fight, to bite back when no one else dared. In the distance, a few villagers gathered, whispering among themselves. They had seen everything. The empire had been hurt, but they were also afraid. Everyone knew the empire does not forgive. When they lose, they come back, stronger. "She's going to bring them down on us," one man whispered. "She fought them alone," another said. "Did you see how they ran? And what happens when they come back with more ships?" Baba Yaga heard their whispers. She didn't turn her head. She had expected this. People were always afraid, but fear had never saved anyone. Only action did. She looked up at the night sky. Far above, the stars were beautiful, cold and endless. Somewhere among them, on a distant steel world, her 3 sons were either alive or buried. The thought burned inside her like fire. "I'm coming," she whispered. The bigger honey badger lifted its head and sniffed the wind. Its sharp black eyes stared toward the dark sky. It could sense something. It always did. Baba Yaga slowly stood up. She walked to the edge of the village where the forest met the open field. The burned grass and broken armor glowed faintly under the moonlight. She crouched down and touched the silver plate of an Empire soldier's mask. It was cracked clean through. "They bled," she said softly to herself. They finally bled. She knew what would happen next. The Empire would not stay quiet. They would send more soldiers, maybe a whole squadron of ships, maybe worse. And they would not come just to take children this time. They would come to destroy. Morning came cold and gray. A thick fog rolled down from the hills. The forest seemed to hold its breath. Baba Yaga walked into the center of the village. The people were already gathered. Some carried bags, some carried tools. Their faces were pale. They were thinking of running. "Where will you go?" she asked, her voice calm. No one answered. "The Empire owns the skies," she said. "Run where? To another village? They will find you there. They find everyone." An old man stepped forward. His hands trembled, but his voice was steady. "They will come for us because of you. You killed their soldiers." "They came for your children before I killed anyone," she replied. The old man lowered his eyes. A young mother with a baby stepped forward. "What will you do?" she asked. Baba Yaga looked around at their faces. "I will go after them," she said. The villagers gasped. Someone dropped a bucket on the ground. "Go after the Empire?" A man shouted. "You'll get yourself killed." She took a slow breath. "They took my sons. If they come here again, they will take yours too. I will not wait for them." She turned to the forest. The honey badgers followed closely behind her. The crowd began to murmur again. Fear and hope mixed together in their voices. Some saw a mad woman. Others saw a warrior. Baba Yaga entered the woods. The forest had always been her home. She knew its rivers, its paths, its silence. At the heart of the forest stood a hill, hollow inside. Long ago, before the Empire came, she had built something there, a hidden place, a place of preparation. As she stepped inside the cave, green lights came to life on the walls. Machines hummed softly in the shadows. The honey badgers ran ahead, their claws tapping on the metal floor. This was where she had raised them. This was where she built weapons. On a steel table lay maps, old books, and screens showing star charts. The Empire's routes, the ship's flight paths. For years she had listened. She had watched their patrols from the shadows. She knew where they came from, and she knew where she needed to go. She touched the corner of the map. A red dot blinked. Fortress Karos. That was the name of the prison world. It was where children disappeared. It was where her sons were taken. She looked at the honey badgers. "It's time," she said. The smaller one growled softly. The bigger one lowered its head like a soldier awaiting orders. They were ready. Baba Yaga moved to an old metal chest and opened it. Inside lay pieces of dark armor, handmade, scratched, and scarred. She began to put them on slowly. Each piece carried a story, a fight, a promise. She strapped a knife to her thigh. She tied a black scarf around her neck. The final piece was the wooden staff. She slid it into a slot on her back. Its runes glowed faintly. "Empire thinks we are weak," she said. "They will learn." Back in the village, word spread fast. "She's leaving," someone whispered. "She's going after them," another answered. Some called her crazy. Some prayed for her, and some, very quietly, hoped she would win. An old woman came to the forest to find her. Baba Yaga was standing near the edge looking at the gray horizon. "Yaga," the woman said softly. "You can't fight them alone?" Baba Yaga looked at her. "I have already started. They will crush you. Then let them try," the old woman sighed. She took something from her pocket, a small piece of cloth with 3 carved symbols. "These are for your sons," she said. Baba Yaga took it gently. "I will bring them home." She turned to the honey badgers. "We move before the Empire does." As the sun began to set again, far above the sky, a fleet of Empire ships was already moving. Inside the largest ship, Commander Varric stood in front of a hologram. A red mark blinked over the name of Baba Yaga's village. "She killed 9 soldiers," one officer said nervously. "And the ship barely escaped," another added. Varric clenched his jaw. "An old woman and 2 animals," he said slowly. "This is an insult. She used some kind of enhanced creatures," the officer added. "And old tech. We don't know what she is." "She's a problem," Varric said coldly. "And problems are meant to be erased." The fleet changed course. Down on the forest floor, Baba Yaga climbed the hill and looked at the stars. The honey badger sat quietly beside her. She had no army, no ships, no soldiers. Only rage, 2 beasts, and a lifetime of pain. But she didn't need an army. She was the storm. "I'm coming for you," she whispered to the stars. "And I will tear down your walls." The bigger honey badger growled like thunder. The smaller one bared its teeth. In that moment, the night no longer felt cold. Baba Yaga walked into the darkness with her beasts beside her. The shadow of the empire was already moving toward her. But she didn't run. She stepped into it. The war between a mother and an empire had truly begun. The stars looked cold as Baba Yaga walked through the dark forest. She moved like a shadow, silent and fast. The honey badgers followed closely, their claws pressing softly against the damp ground. Above them, black clouds covered the moon. The air smelled like rain and iron. Baba Yaga stopped on a hill that overlooked the valley. At the bottom of the valley, hidden between 2 cliffs, was something no villager had ever seen. A ship. Not a warship. Not a fighter. A small craft she had built herself over many years. Its metal was black like the night sky, shaped to disappear into the dark. She had named it Ashen Wing. She stepped closer. The honey badgers sniffed the air, making sure nothing unwanted was near. The ramp opened with a low hiss. Lights blinked softly inside, warm and orange. This place was not just a ship. It was home. A secret she had kept from everyone. She placed her hand on the side of the ship. The metal was cold, but it felt alive to her. "It's time," she whispered. Inside the ship, the walls were narrow but strong. Old tech mixed with her own work. Wires, armor, sharp tools, and strange glowing stones. The honey badgers walked in behind her, their paws tapping lightly on the floor. On the control panel, a star map appeared. In the middle of it was a red blinking dot, Fortress Karos. That was where her sons had been taken 3 years ago. That was where this journey would end, but the way there was not safe. The Empire controlled the skies. Their patrol ships flew every night. One wrong move, and she would be burned out of the stars. She sat in the pilot's chair and pulled down a worn leather strap. Her hands moved fast, pressing buttons she had pressed 1,000 times in secret. The engines hummed softly like a beast waking up. The honey badgers settled down near her feet. They were calm, but their eyes were sharp. They had learned to fly with her before. This was not their first hunt. As the ship slowly rose from the valley floor, Baba Yaga looked out the window. The forest below grew smaller. The village disappeared behind the trees. She whispered quietly, almost like a prayer. "For you, Luca. For you, Ilya. For you, Dima." Her sons' faces flashed in her mind. Luca, the oldest, always brave and loud. Ilya, quiet and clever, with hands that could fix anything. And Dima, the youngest, always laughing, always running to her when the sky thundered. She remembered the night they were taken. The same hum of engines, the same silver masks. She had hidden them in the cellar, but the soldiers had found them. She remembered their cries as the ship door closed. She remembered the silence after. Baba Yaga's hand tightened on the control stick. Her eyes turned cold. "I'm coming for you," she said. The ship broke through the clouds. Stars filled the sky. The blackness of space opened around her like a great ocean. The honey badgers sat quietly. They were not afraid. They only knew her voice. She pushed the throttle forward. The ship became a streak of darkness, racing into the stars. Far away, inside a giant warship, Commander Varric stood before a blue hologram. "She escaped the village," an officer said, "and she's heading toward the outer rim." Varric's jaw tightened. "Then we find her, and we crush her." The officer hesitated. "Sir, it's just one woman." "One woman killed 9 soldiers," Varric said coldly. She is not just one woman. He turned to the map. A small red line showed her path. It led toward Karos. He smiled without warmth. She's going to the prison. How predictable. He tapped the table. Send the hunter ships. Back in the stars, Baba Yaga's ship glided silently through a dark corridor between Empire patrol zones. She had memorized every safe route over the years. But the Empire was not blind. Suddenly, a soft beep filled the cockpit. A warning light flashed red. Baba Yaga narrowed her eyes. They found us. She pulled the ship into a steep roll just as 3 hunter ships appeared from the black. They were smaller than warships, but faster. Their lights were sharp and red like hungry wolves. The honey badgers growled at the sound of their engines. Baba Yaga adjusted the controls quickly. She couldn't fight them head-on. She wasn't here for a war in the sky. Not yet, she whispered to the ship. Hold together, the hunters opened fire. Red beams cut through the dark like knives. One beam missed by only a few meters. Another scraped the left wing. Sparks exploded in the cabin. Baba Yaga gritted her teeth. Not today. She flipped a small switch. The back of the ship opened, releasing a trail of metal dust and fragments she had prepared for years. The hunters followed. Too close. The fragments exploded into bright light, blinding their sensors. One hunter spun out of control and hit a drifting rock. A small explosion painted the black sky orange. 2 left, she muttered. She dove the ship lower into a dark asteroid field. Massive stones floated in silence, turning slowly like sleeping giants. The hunters followed, but Baba Yaga knew this place better. She twisted the ship through narrow gaps, the engines roaring softly. Another red beam shot past. It hit a rock and exploded. The shockwave shook her ship, but she kept flying. The honey badgers crouched low, steady, as if they could feel her heartbeat. She saw one of the hunter ships behind her. She waited, and then she pulled the ship upward sharply. The hunter couldn't follow the turn fast enough. It slammed into a huge asteroid and burst into flame. One left, she whispered. The last hunter was fast. Too fast. It came close, firing again. The ship trembled. Lights flickered. A warning alarm screamed in her ears. A panel sparked beside her head. The honey badgers growled louder. Baba Yaga didn't blink. She turned the ship toward a cluster of spinning rocks. It was dangerous. One wrong move and she'd be crushed. But danger didn't scare her anymore. Losing her sons had already taken everything else. She pushed the throttle. The ship slid between 2 massive spinning stones like a blade through water. The hunter followed, but its wings scraped the edge of one rock. It spun out, broke apart, and exploded into the void. Silence. Baba Yaga breathed out slowly. That was close. She checked the screens. The ship was damaged, but still flying. The honey badgers lay down again, their eyes calm. She smiled faintly. Good beasts. Hours passed as the ship moved closer to the outer rim, the edge of Empire territory. The stars here were colder, empty. Only old wreckage and dust floated here. Perfect for hiding. Baba Yaga slowed the engines and parked the ship inside a broken cargo carrier. She needed to fix the damage before going further. She stepped out with a heavy tool bag. The honey badgers followed, sniffing the metal air. The inside of the wreck was silent. Dust floated in the weak light. Her boots echoed softly. She started repairing the wing, welding metal plates together. As she worked, her mind wandered again. She thought of Luca's loud laugh, of Ilya building wooden birds, of Dima falling asleep on her shoulder. She had carried those memories like knives for 3 years. But now they burned like fire. I'll find you, she whispered. Even if I have to tear the Empire apart. She touched the piece of cloth the old woman had given her. It had the symbols of her sons. She tied it around her arm. Far above, the Empire fleet grew. Commander Varric stood at the center of the bridge. 2 hunter ships are gone, the officer reported. She's heading straight for Karos. Let her, Varric said with a cold smile. We'll be waiting. The shadow of the Empire grew heavier. Baba Yaga climbed back into her ship. The engines hummed softly. The honey badgers rested at her feet. Ahead of her in the darkness, a single red light blinked on the star map. Karos. The prison world. The place where her sons were taken. the place where her revenge would begin. She gripped the controls tightly. "We're close," she whispered. "Hold on." The ship turned and disappeared into the black. The hunter had become the hunted. Karos hung in the black sky like a dead world. Its surface was dark gray, covered in storm clouds and endless ice. Huge towers rose out of the ground like metal fangs. Blue searchlights cut through the night, sweeping the air for anything that dared to come close. Baba Yaga's ship floated quietly in the shadow of a broken satellite. From this distance, the prison world looked silent. But she knew better. Karos was a place where the Empire buried its secrets. She leaned forward in the pilot's seat, her eyes sharp. "There it is!" The honey badgers stood beside her, noses twitching. Even they could sense the danger below. On the control panel, the scanner showed dozens of defense towers. Drone ships circled the sky like metal vultures. No one was supposed to come here. No one ever left. Baba Yaga whispered, "We don't go through the front." She pressed a switch, and the Ashen Wing's lights turned off. The ship blended into the darkness like smoke. She slowly moved closer, gliding behind a field of floating wreckage. Broken Empire ships drifted in silence, remnants of old wars. This was the only safe path she had found years ago. A forgotten hole in a wall too proud to believe anyone would ever fight back. The honey badgers crouched low, their red eyes glowing faintly. They were not afraid. They had only one job: protect their mother. Baba Yaga guided the ship into the upper atmosphere. Storm clouds wrapped around the hull. Thunder cracked somewhere below. Rain slammed against the metal like small stones. The whole ship shuddered, but she kept a firm hand on the controls. Below the storm, Karos stretched out like a nightmare. High towers, black walls, prison blocks as big as cities. And in the center, a tall white spire, the command tower. That's where the Empire kept the records, and maybe her sons. She pulled the ship lower toward a service tunnel near the northern ridge. Old and half buried in ice. No one used it anymore. Perfect for a ghost. She turned to the honey badgers. Quiet. They pressed closer to the floor. They understood. Baba Yaga landed the ship on the frozen ridge with no sound. The ramp opened slowly. Cold wind rushed inside, sharp as a knife. She pulled her black scarf up over her face. Snow swirled around her boots. The honey badgers stepped down beside her, their breath white in the air. They moved with silent power, their claws digging into the ice. Before entering the tunnel, Baba Yaga crouched and looked at the sky. Searchlights swept above the storm. Far in the distance, Empire ships moved like shadows. She had to move fast. She placed her hand on the icy wall. "I'm back," she whispered. "And this time, I'm not leaving without them." The tunnel was narrow and dark. Only the soft green glow of her staff lit the way. The walls were cracked and rusted, a forgotten path built long ago. Water dripped slowly from the ceiling, echoing in the silence. She moved carefully, one step at a time. The honey badgers walked close behind her. They sniffed the air and growled softly. They could smell Empire soldiers ahead. Baba Yaga stopped. Her eyes narrowed. A soft red light flickered in the distance. A guard drone hovered silently at the end of the tunnel, scanning the air with blue beams. She lowered her body and whispered, "Stay low." The honey badgers melted into the shadows. Baba Yaga pulled a small device from her belt, a pulse trap she had built from scavenged tech. She threw it softly down the tunnel. The drone picked up the small sound and turned toward it. Click! A flash of blue light burst out, and the drone dropped like a stone. "Good," she whispered. She stepped over the broken machine and kept moving. Far above, inside the command tower, Commander Varric stood looking at a hologram of the northern tunnel. An alarm blinked softly. "Sir," a guard said. "There's movement in the ridge." Varric turned slowly. "She's here," he smiled, cold and thin. "Bring out the hunters. I want her alive." Baba Yaga reached a service shaft that led into the prison compound. She climbed the ladder silently. Her black armor blended into the shadows. The honey badgers climbed beside her with ease, their claws gripping the metal. At the top, she pushed a rusted panel aside and crawled out onto a narrow maintenance platform high above the prison yard. Below her, the yard stretched out like a cage. Rows of tall fences, armed towers, bright lights. Soldiers marched in perfect lines. Machines hummed and screamed. The smell of metal, oil, and fear filled the air. And then she saw them. The cages, hundreds of children, thin, cold, silent. Some sat against the bars. Some looked up at the sky. Their faces were pale, their eyes empty. Baba Yaga's heart clenched. She saw Luca's face in one boy, Ilya in another, Dima in a child clutching a piece of wire like a toy. "I'm coming," she whispered. The honey badgers crouched low beside her. Their breath was heavy. They understood the pain in her voice. Suddenly, a sound. Metal boots on the platform behind her. Baba Yaga spun around. A soldier stepped out of the shadows, rifle raised. He didn't have time to shout. The bigger honey badger leapt forward like lightning. The soldier fell backward with a scream, the rifle clattering to the ground. Another soldier appeared. Baba Yaga moved fast, grabbing the staff from her back. The runes glowed bright green. She hit him in the chest with one strike. The energy burned through his armor. He hit the railing and fell into the yard below. The alarm began to ring. Beep! Beep! The prison lights turned red. Baba Yaga's eyes flashed with rage. "They know," she whispered. The prison exploded into chaos. Soldiers shouted. Gates slammed shut. Searchlights spun toward the platform. Dozens of soldiers began climbing the ladders and stairs. Baba Yaga didn't run. She moved like a storm. The honey badgers jumped onto the first soldiers that reached the platform. Metal screamed. Armor broke, men fell. Their red eyes cut through the dark like fire. Baba Yaga spun her staff like a blade. Energy flashed. A soldier tried to grab her. She slammed the staff into his helmet and sent him crashing into the wall, but the soldiers kept coming. She looked at the cages below. The children were awake now, watching. Their small faces pressed against the bars. They saw something they had never seen before, someone fighting for them. Down in the control room, Commander Varric watched the fight on the screens. "She's tearing through the north platform," an officer shouted. "Let her," Varric said calmly. "She's walking into the heart of the prison. Close the exits." Baba Yaga grabbed a soldier's rifle and threw it like a spear into another man's chest. The honey badgers roared, pulling soldiers down like wolves pulling down a stag. "Move!" she shouted. She jumped down onto a lower level, landing in front of the cages. Soldiers opened fire from the tower, but she moved fast. The bullets hit the ground behind her. She slammed the staff into the lock of the first cage. Green light exploded. The bars melted. A boy stared at her with wide eyes. "Run," she said. "Hide." The children didn't move at first. They didn't believe anyone could fight the Empire. But then, one by one, they began to crawl out of the cages. The honey badgers formed a shield around them, growling at anyone who came close. More soldiers poured in. Varric himself began moving toward the yard. He walked with slow, heavy steps. "Bring her to me," he ordered. Baba Yaga saw the reinforcements. She didn't flinch. She raised her staff. Her eyes burned bright. "Come then," she whispered. "Let's finish this." The ground shook as more soldiers surrounded the yard. The sky above filled with drones and red lights. The Empire's prison world had become a battlefield. But Baba Yaga stood in the middle, unbroken. The children huddled behind the honey badgers. The beasts growled, low and dangerous. Snow and ash swirled in the wind. The witch of the forest had returned. And the Empire was about to remember why they feared her name. The night sky above Karos burned with red lights. Sirens screamed through the prison yard. Soldiers shouted. Drones circled overhead like angry hornets, and in the center of it all stood Baba Yaga, her black scarf whipped in the freezing wind. Snow swirled around her like ash. Behind her, the honey badgers stood low and ready, their glowing red eyes locked on the soldiers closing in. All around them, children huddled together, their faces pale but filled with something new. Hope. Commander Varric entered the yard, his black armor gleaming under the red lights. He walked slowly, like a man who thought the ground belonged to him. "Baba Yaga," he said, his voice cold and deep. "I've been waiting." Baba Yaga didn't move. She stood with her staff at her side, her fingers tight around the wood. "You took my sons," she said. "You will give them back." Varric tilted his head slightly, like a man listening to a fool. "Your sons? We take many. We need soldiers. The Empire always needs soldiers. If they are still alive, they belong to us." The children behind Baba Yaga flinched. "She didn't." "They belong to me," she said softly, but the words cut like a knife. Varric raised one hand. "Kill her!" Dozens of soldiers rushed forward, their boots slamming into the metal ground. Drones dropped from the sky, their guns glowing. Red lasers lit the air. Baba Yaga whispered, "Now!" The honey badgers leapt. The bigger one hit the front line like a black comet, knocking soldiers down like they were nothing. Armor cracked under its weight. Claws ripped through helmets. A soldier screamed as the beast threw him into a wall like a rag doll. The smaller badger dashed between legs like a shadow, biting through wires and joints in the armor. Its speed was terrifying. Soldiers aimed at it, but by the time they fired, it was already behind them. Baba Yaga moved with them, like a storm given a body. She swung her staff through the air. Green light burst out like a wave. 3 soldiers flew backward, their rifles spinning away. Another tried to shoot her. She ducked low and struck his knee. Armor shattered. The honey badgers roared. Drones fired from above, but Baba Yaga spun the staff and threw it like a spear. It hit a drone dead center. Sparks exploded in the air. The children screamed and ducked, but they didn't run. They watched as one woman and 2 beasts fought an entire Empire unit. Varric watched without blinking. "She's strong," he said. "Stronger than the reports. Do we deploy the hounds?" An officer asked beside him. Varric's lips curled into a thin smile. "Yes, release them." Behind the towers, metal doors opened with a hiss. 4 metal creatures walked out. They were long and low to the ground with sharp steel claws and glowing red eyes. Empire hounds, war machines built to kill anything that moved. The children gasped. Even the honey badgers growled louder. They could smell the metal and blood. Baba Yaga's eyes narrowed. "Come then!" The hounds charged, fast, faster than men. Their claws tore into the metal floor, throwing sparks behind them. The honey badgers didn't wait. They rushed forward. The 2 sides collided with a sound like thunder. Metal claws clashed with living claws. Sparks flew everywhere. The big honey badger caught the first hound by the neck and slammed it into the ground. The machine twisted and hissed. The smaller badger jumped onto another hound's back, biting through its armor plating. One hound bit into the big badger's shoulder. It roared, shaking its head violently, throwing the machine away like it was made of paper. The fight was brutal and fast, the air filled with growls, screams, and the screech of tearing metal. Baba Yaga ran through the chaos like a shadow. She jumped over fallen soldiers and hit another with her staff. The green runes burned brighter now. She could feel the power rising inside her. She had spent years hiding it. Not anymore. Varric walked closer, slowly, his heavy boots echoing across the yard. Unlike his soldiers, he wasn't afraid. He drew a black blade from his belt, long and curved like a predator's tooth. It glimmered under the red light. "Enough games," he said. Baba Yaga turned toward him. Her eyes were calm, cold, and burning with rage. "Agreed." They met in the middle of the yard, stepping over broken metal and bodies. The children watched with wide eyes. Soldiers stepped back, creating a circle around them. Even the fighting beasts slowed, sensing the storm about to break. Varric swung his blade. It cut through the air like lightning. Baba Yaga blocked it with her staff. The clash sent a shockwave through the yard. Snow lifted from the ground. He was strong. She was faster. He swung again. She moved sideways, letting the blade pass. She hit his chest with the glowing end of her staff. The armor cracked slightly. He stumbled but didn't fall. He slashed upward. She bent backward. The blade passed just inches from her face. She rolled, came up behind him, and struck his back. The green light exploded. He growled like a beast, spinning around with fury. "You can't win!" Varric spat. "You're just one woman." Baba Yaga's voice was soft. "I'm a mother." She hit him again, harder. This time the blade clattered out of his hand. She struck his leg. He fell to one knee. She pressed the glowing staff to his helmet. The runes pulsed like a heartbeat. All around them, soldiers froze. Drones hovered, unsure whether to shoot. "Where are my sons?" she whispered. Varric glared at her, his breath steaming through the cracks in his mask. "You think they still live?" he hissed. "You're too late." The words struck her like a blow. For a second, her heart trembled. He laughed. "Karos eats everything, even hope." She tightened her grip on the staff. "Then I will make it choke." She slammed the staff against his helmet. The mask shattered. He screamed and fell backward, blood on his lips. The honey badgers finished the last of the hounds. Their fur was stained with blood and oil. They stood beside Baba Yaga, growling at the remaining soldiers. The soldiers began to step back. They had come to capture one woman. Now they stood surrounded by the wreckage of their own forces. Fear spread through them like smoke. "Run," she said quietly, and some of them did. She turned toward the children. Their faces were dirty, tired, but their eyes burned bright now. "Follow me," she said. "We're leaving." The oldest boy stepped forward. "Who are you?" Baba Yaga's voice softened. "Someone who lost everything, and will not lose again." She led them toward the gate. The honey badgers walked on each side like living walls. Snow fell heavier now, turning the ground white and red. Sirens wailed in the distance. Up in the command tower, an officer looked at the ruined yard in horror. "She defeated the commander," he whispered. "Seal the base," another shouted. "Call for reinforcements. Don't let her reach the docks!" But it was already too late. Baba Yaga walked out of the yard with dozens of children behind her and two monsters at her side. The storm howled, but she didn't look back. Her war had just begun. Somewhere deep in the prison, in a cell with no light, 3 names were carved into the wall: Luca, Ilya, and Dima, her sons. She was getting closer. The storm over Karos had grown wild. Black clouds swirled above the prison fortress. Sirens screamed. Red lights flashed across every wall. Soldiers shouted orders into radios that no one could hear over the wind, and through the snow and smoke walked Baba Yaga, with 2 glowing-eyed honey badgers at her side and dozens of children behind her. The prison yard behind her was broken. The commander lay beaten. The hounds were destroyed. But the war was not over. Not yet. The sound of engines filled the sky. Heavy warships broke through the clouds, their lights blinding in the storm. Rows of Empire soldiers poured out from the towers like a black river. One of the older boys behind Baba Yaga whispered, "There are too many." She turned her head slightly, her eyes cold and calm. "Then we make them remember us." She knelt down beside the children. "When I open the way, you run. Straight to the ship. Do not look back." The little ones clutched each other. They were afraid, but they trusted her. In their short lives, they had never seen anyone stand against the Empire. And now they followed a woman who fought like fire. She turned to the honey badgers. Their fur was stained with blood and metal dust. Their breaths came out in white clouds. Their eyes burned brighter than ever. They were tired, but ready. Baba Yaga looked up at the towering black gates that led to the main prison core. Her sons were beyond those walls. This was the last wall, and she had no intention of leaving it standing. The soldiers formed a massive line in front of the gate. Their rifles hummed red. Drones hovered above like angry insects. Warships circled overhead. A voice echoed from a loudspeaker. "Surrender! You cannot win!" Baba Yaga raised her staff and whispered, "I don't need to win. I just need to burn everything down." The ground beneath her feet trembled as the staff glowed with a deep green light. The wind howled. The storm bent around her like it was listening. Then she struck the ground. A wave of green fire exploded outward. Soldiers screamed and fell back. Their rifles sparked and died. Drones shook in the air, losing control. The gate cracked, the steel bending and screaming. "Move!" she shouted to the children. The honey badgers roared and charged forward, hitting the front line of soldiers like 2 living meteors. Armor shattered, men flew. The red line broke like glass. The children ran behind her through the smoke and snow. Soldiers tried to fire, but their weapons flickered uselessly. The storm itself seemed to fight for her. Inside the command tower, a young officer's voice shook. "She's breaking the front line, sir." Another voice answered, "We need the bombers!" A third voice, calm and cold, said, "No, Bring the elite guard. The screen showed Baba Yaga walking through fire like a ghost from an old nightmare. The elite guard came fast. 6 black-armored soldiers dropped from a warship. They moved with precision. No fear. These were killers. The best the Empire had. One of them pointed at her. "End this!" They rushed forward. Fast. Baba Yaga met them head-on. The first swung a long blade. She blocked it with her staff and kicked him hard in the chest. He flew back into the snow. Another tried to grab her from behind. She spun and struck him in the throat. He fell without a sound. 2 more fired shock cannons. The honey badgers jumped between them and Baba Yaga, taking the blasts with a roar, then leapt forward, tearing the cannons apart. The 5th guard landed a hit on her shoulder. Pain shot through her arm, but she didn't stop. She grabbed his helmet and slammed his head into the wall. The 6th came in with a blade glowing red. She caught it with her bare hand. Blood ran down her fingers, but her eyes burned brighter. She whispered, "This is for Luca." She slammed the staff into his chest. The energy burst out like a star going supernova. The soldier flew backward and didn't rise again. The honey badgers stood beside her, breathing heavy, surrounded by broken armor and smoking weapons. The elite were down, and ahead, the gate finally cracked open. Inside the prison core, it was silent. Cold white lights filled the long halls. The walls were smooth, clean, and dead. She stepped inside, leaving the storm behind. Rows of cells stretched in every direction. Doors locked with energy fields hummed softly. Behind them were more prisoners, adults, teenagers, and children. Many stared at her with wide, disbelieving eyes. She raised her staff. The runes glowed bright green like a sun in the dark. "Wake up," she said softly. One by one, the locks began to melt. The doors opened. People stepped out slowly. Some cried. Some shook. Some stared at her like they were seeing a ghost. A boy whispered, "Who is she?" An old prisoner answered, "Hope." She moved deeper into the hallway, her heart pounding. She could feel it. She didn't know how, but she felt them. Luca, Ilya, Dima. She turned a corner and stopped. 3 cells. 3 names scratched on the wall. Her breath caught in her throat. She smashed the locks with one swing of the staff. The doors opened with a hiss. Luca was the first to step out. Taller now, harder. His face was scarred, but his eyes, those were still her son's eyes. He froze when he saw her. "Mother?" he whispered. Ilya came next. Quiet, thin, but alive. Dima, the youngest, stumbled out after him. His small hands grabbed her coat like he used to when the sky thundered. Baba Yaga fell to her knees, pulling all 3 of them into her arms. For the first time in years, her body shook. Not from fear, from everything she had held inside. "I found you," she whispered. "I found you, Mother," Luca said, his voice breaking. "We thought you were dead." "I was," she said softly. "Until now." But there was no time. The walls shook. Explosions echoed through the corridors. The Empire was not giving up. Luca stepped forward. "We have to go." She looked at him, at Ilya, at little Dima clinging to her arm. They were bruised, but strong. She smiled faintly. "Yes, we go home." She turned back. Hundreds of prisoners were looking at her now, waiting. She raised her staff. "Follow me," she said. "This is the night the Empire falls." Outside, warships screamed through the storm. Bombers dropped fire into the snow. But Baba Yaga walked through the chaos like a storm of her own. The honey badgers tore through anyone who came too close. Luca grabbed a fallen rifle and fired with a steady hand. Ilya hacked the locks on the gates with skill that made her proud. Little Dima carried a torch, lighting the path for others. The Empire had brought its entire force down on one woman, and that woman was tearing it apart. At the edge of the ridge, the ashen wing waited. Smoke and snow filled the air as explosions lit up the sky behind them. Baba Yaga turned for one last look at the burning prison. The Empire's fortress, once feared, now broken. Varric, wounded but alive, crawled to the top of the wall, blood on his face. He stared at her with hatred. "This isn't over," he spat. She met his gaze, cold and steady. "No, it's only the beginning." The ramp closed behind her. The engines roared to life. The ship rose into the storm, cutting through the night like a dark blade. Below, Kairos burned. Inside the ship, Luca sat beside her, holding Dima. Ilya leaned against the wall, breathing hard but smiling for the first time in years. The other freed children sat quietly, safe for the first time. Baba Yaga looked at them all. She touched the cloth tied around her arm, the one with their names. She had walked through fire, blood, and steel to bring them home, and she would do it again. The honey badgers lay on the floor, tired but proud, their eyes still glowing faintly. They had protected what mattered most. Baba Yaga looked out the window at the stars. The Empire still ruled the galaxy. But tonight something had changed. Fear had changed sides. She whispered, "I'm coming for the rest of you." And somewhere out in the stars, the Empire trembled,